happy to be at the Book Fest again, and I'm here for a particular reason. After many, many decades, I've written a new cookbook, A Tomato Grows in Brooklyn.
In March of 2022, journalist Gabriel Sherman at Vanity Fair put out an expose on a man by the name of David Ruggerio, a famed New York City chef and television personality who claims to have lived a double life as a made man and killer for the Gambino crime family. Let's dig into this man's story and go over some of the things discussed in this article and beyond. Before we continue, please know that I'm only discussing the things that David has said and talking about his career as a chef in New York City. The point of this upload is not to pass judgment or infect the story with my own opinions. I advise you to please comment and express your opinions down below, and we can chat about it. Most of the details come from the Vanity Fair article, which I will link in this video's description. David Ruggerio was born in 1962 in Brooklyn, New York. According to his baptismal certificate, he was born Sabatino Antonino Gambino. His father, Saverio Gambino, is said to be a cousin of the late Gambino boss, Carlo Gambino. His father, Saverio, would be sent to prison for heroin trafficking when David was only 2 years old. He would take his mother's new husband's last name, but later changed his name to Ruggiero, which was a different spelling of his grandmother's maiden name, Ruggiero, a grandmother who David claims to be the aunt of Gambino mobster and John Gotti confidant, Angelo Quack Quack Ruggiero. As an adolescent, David would get involved in the fencing of stolen goods like fireworks and clothing for the local Brooklyn mobsters. In David's teen years, he would become a boxer, where he would train out of local Brooklyn gym, owned by famed Jewish boxer Izzy Zerling. It would be in his teen years that he would start building himself a criminal record, with arrests for gambling and fighting. One of the first mobsters he claimed to be involved with was a man by the name of Egidio Ernie Boy Onorato. Onorato was a reputed Gambino capo, and according to David, one of the most ruthless men he had ever been around. When David was only 11 years old, he said that he accompanied Onorato to the Lower East Side, where he would witness Onorato lure a suspected informant named Anthony Finn to an alleyway where he would watch him beat him to death. He then would help Onorato load the body into a car and leave it on Avenue A in the Lower East Side. Here's an article which dates to 1974 and mentions the body of Finn being found. In 1976, when David was 13, his father, who had been in prison for heroin trafficking for most of David's life, would get out of prison and open a taxi service and fish market. It would be here where David said he got involved in the selling of heroin and loan sharking out of his father's establishments. In 1977, when David Ruggerio was only 15, he said he went to Sicily with his father Saverio, where he would become a made man in a ceremony which was presided over by Santo Inzerillo, a brother of Palermo boss Totuccio Inzerillo. When he returned home to Brooklyn, he would get back into his life of crime. In the article, David claims to have been a part of another hit, which took place in March of 1978. Him and Onorato would torture and kill a 56-year-old Genovese and Colombo associate named Pasquale Patty Mac Macchiarol at an auto garage in Yonkers. They would then leave him in the trunk of a car in Brooklyn. Here's an article detailing the police finding him. In 1980, a good friend of Ruggerio, named Joey Skeech Cannizzaro, would be beat to death by Onorato in front of Ruggerio, and they would both wrap Cannizzaro up in a rug and dump his body in Sheepshead Bay. According to Ruggerio, his friend Joey Cannizzaro had recently circumcised himself in order to impress a Jewish girl he was dating. Onorato found out and decided to beat him to death. In 1981, Ruggerio's best friend, an up-and-coming star in the world of bodybuilding, Cesar Giuliani, would be shot dead in his car in Flatlands, Brooklyn. According to David, Onorato was most likely the shooter and committed the crime at the behest of a Bronx wise guy whose girlfriend Giuliani was sleeping with. Now, just a quick side note on Cesar Giuliani. I had received an email last year from a viewer. If you're watching, you know who you are. And he had grown up in the Canarsie Flatlands area And I guess him and his father had some stories, something to that effect. And there was a couple of emails back and forth. And we were mostly speaking about the character of Mikey Muscles, who was a victim of the DeMeo crew. A bodybuilder and a guy who was said to be, let's say, into young boys. So he knew some things about him. And at the end of one of these emails, he mentions the name Caesar Giuliani to me. Now, I didn't know who that was. For some reason, he had felt that maybe Giuliani was a victim of the Gemini crew, being around the same time period, killed in Flatlands, mysteriously in his car, another bodybuilder. It's a good suspicion, you know? So I had looked into it. Never able to connect anything myself, but it was an interesting thing to look into. Long story short, I come across this article, and he's the best friend of David Ruggerio, and Ruggerio offers us up a explanation, possibly, for the death of this man you see here, the up-and-coming bodybuilder, a young star in the bodybuilding scene by the name of Caesar Giuliani. So, just thought I'd share that. Shortly after the death of David Ruggerio's best friend, Caesar Giuliani, his girlfriend would pass away from a heroin overdose. Ruggerio would place blame on Onorato and would plot to kill him. But according to Ruggerio, the Gambino family would step in and stop the plot. He would distance himself from Onorato and soon join up with Carmine Lombardozzi. He would then start plying his trade as a New York City chef, because according to him, you had to have a real job to work for Carmine the Dr. Lombardozzi. In 1981, he would start working at French restaurant La Caravelle, under chef Roger Fesagai. He would live a double life while working in this restaurant, and apparently still be committing criminal acts, like roughing guys up on the streets and collecting money for the mob. It would be around this time that David Ruggerio would be arrested for attempted murder after stabbing a man on a subway platform. According to David Ruggerio, he did it in self-defense. He would be bailed out by Lombardozzi's nephew, Gambino mobster Danny Marino. He would soon skip town, and the Gambino family would pay a visit to the victim's home and convince him not to press charges, which he didn't. In 1983, David Ruggerio would return back to New York City and continue his work at La Caravelle after convincing chef Roger Fesagai to give him his job back. His relationship with Gambino mobster Danny Marino, who bailed him out, would continue to grow over the years, after Danny Marino took over Carmine Lombardozzi's crew. Ruggerio stated that he would often go to Marino's home for Sunday dinner, where Marino would make meatballs, which he was very proud of, even secretly giving the recipe to Ruggerio. According to Ruggerio, John Gotti would once criticize Marino's meatballs, causing Marino not to associate with Gotti for months. Pretty serious business. In 1984, Ruggerio would become sous chef of La Caravelle, and by the late 80s, he would become executive chef at just 26 years old. In 1990, Ruggerio would be hired by fashion designer Pierre Cardin to take over and redesign his restaurant, Maxim's. It would be here where David said he would cater John Gotti's 50th birthday, after being personally asked by John Gotti to do so. In the next couple of years, Maxim will receive rave reviews and accolades from New York City food critics, including 3 stars from the New York Times. David's reputation would continue to rise. In 1992, he would start working at Le Chantilly on East 57th Street after being hired by restaurateur Camille Dulac. The reviews were great, as was the clientele, but the restaurant would soon go into bankruptcy, and it seemed as though Dulac was hiding much of the money problems the restaurant was having. However, Ruggerio was able to purchase the restaurant at auction by pulling some mafia strings he had. He would still continue his relationship with Dulac. In the spring of 1994, Ruggerio and Dulac would then open up a new restaurant, Nona, with a 6-figure investment from Gambino mobster Danny Marino, who himself was about to go to prison. He would soon find out that Le Chantilly restaurant was behind tens of thousands of dollars in back taxes. He would place blame on Camille Dulac, and soon work to cut ties with him. According to Ruggerio, he would visit Danny Marino in prison and tell him of the situation, stating that Dulac had to go, and he had promised to get Marino his money back. Ruggerio would claim that he would catch up to Camille Dulac outside La Chantilly restaurant and assault him. The next day, he would meet Dulac in the restaurant and tell him he had an hour to get his shit together and clear the hell out, or he would kill him. In the winter of 1995, Ruggiero said that he had kidnapped Dulac with a team of guys out of Brooklyn. They tossed him in a van and drove him to a beach in Breezy Point, Queens, where they would drag him out and make him sign a legal contract that Ruggiero had a lawyer draft up. Then, they would throw him in a hole they dug out in the sand and leave him there as he begged for mercy. Today, Camille Dulac denies any of this ever happening. David's star would continue to rise, and in that same year of 1995, famed wine merchant Robert Mondavi would name Ruggiero one of the 13 best young chefs in America. He would soon make his way to television, which shows Little Italy with David Ruggerio on PBS and Ruggiero to Go on the Food Network. On Thursday, July 12, 1998, his restaurant La Chantilly would be raided by officers wearing what Ruggiero describes as Gambino Squad orange vests. They would take all the financial documents from the restaurant, and Ruggiero would be hit with credit card fraud charges. According to law enforcement, Ruggiero and 2 employees stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from La Chantilly's credit card processing company by inflating tips. In the end, he would cop to grand larceny charges. His restaurant and TV career would soon fall apart. He would claim to get another visit from Danny Marino, who was just released from prison shortly after the bust. He would be reprimanded by Marino for his role in the bust. In the coming years, Ruggiero would go on to own a strip club and run other establishments, including a Jewish deli, a sushi restaurant, and a donut shop. In 2014, Ruggiero would be arrested for using a forged check during a real estate deal. He would plead guilty to 1 count of possession of a forged bank instrument and avoid jail. Sadly, also in 2014, David would experience the loss of his son, who he says passed away due to a lethal combo of alcohol and OxyContin. According to Ruggiero, his longtime friend and mobster Danny Marino did not attend his son's funeral. He would state that after that, he was officially done with the mob and cut off all contact with Marino. So I suppose that means Ruggiero was still affiliated with the mob in New York City as recent as 2014. There's a lot more in this article. As I said, I advise you to check out the link in my description of this upload. I will post the Vanity Fair article, which was done by Gabriel Sherman. Talks about David Ruggerio and many of the things that I had discussed here. There's also some other things in there, some FBI agents chiming in, talking about Marino being at these restaurants, and one of them says that Ruggerio was in Marino's crew. So there's a lot to think about. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. We'll talk about it. Please subscribe if you'd like to donate to this channel. There is a Cash App in the About section of this video. There's also a super thanks right up top, a couple of clicks to the right of that thumbs up. You'll see a money sign. That's another way you can donate to the channel. Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great week.